Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Connected Wellness Podcast. I am Rachel Ann. I'm here with the lovely Marianne, and we are so passionate about wellness.
Here in this podcast, we look at the ways our physical, emotional, and spiritual health is all connected and how we can take better care of our whole selves holistically to live our best lives. We're really excited that you're here with us on the journey.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 32 of the Connected Wellness Podcast.
Yes. Welcome,
Yay.
everybody. 32.
Thank you. Thank you
We're
for being here. So,
yes.
I like to do things seasonally and we try to pay attention to where we're at. So today's episode, I think, is going to be a great discussion about Lent. So no matter where you're at, if you are Orthodox, we are about to start Lent. If you are not Orthodox, you're kind of right in the middle of it. So if you have no idea what we're talking about, just stay tuned. Lent is a preparation time for Easter. So I think it can be a really good discussion and to see different ways that we can, pay attention during this time of year and benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk about it. I think there's a lot that we can chat about and I don't know, hopefully share information with people who are wondering or struggling or just have a lot of questions about what Lent means for us.
Yeah. And it can be such a personal experience. So there's so many ways to kind of celebrate it or acknowledge it or however you want to call that. But okay, so wellness wins first, right?
Yeah,
What do you
let's
got?
do it. Okay, so my wellness win, it's kind of like a part two of the wellness win from last week, or the last episode, where I talked about how I got a standing desk and it's revolutionary and how I was getting a walking pad and I got that and I haven't really used it yet, but I was really excited to use it. I have used the walking pad. That is my wellness win. This thing, y'all, it is so cool. So I have to paint the full picture here so that you are immersed in this experience with me. So imagine that you have a desk that is electronic and it can go up really high so that you can stand and still type and do what you want to do. Love it. We want to stand, get the blood moving. Good job, team. Then we put a walking pad, which is basically it's like a treadmill, but it's only the bottom part. There's no upper part where you hold on to things, and you just wheel it under the desk, and you push start, and then you walk. While typing and doing all of the things on your standing desk. It is it is so cool. I love it so much. And then let's say you're I'm done with work, but I still want to get my steps in. Cool. You just wheel it around on over near the TV. And then now you're working out while watching TV. You could just it's incredible. So I've been using it on days where if I'm not able to get outside, I have a step goal that I like to meet. I'm at 12,000 steps minimum every day. And if I'm not able to do that, then I just do my little walking pad while I'm working, while I'm watching TV. And it is awesome. And I be sweaty, y'all. So it is a legit workout. It is a legit treadmill. You can change the speed of things.
Yeah.
Some reviews said that she's a runner and she puts it on so high that it is good for her running. And I was like, I love that. I don't run, but I love that for you, sis, wherever you are in the Amazon reviews. So I'm using the walking pad and I'm loving it. And that is my wellness win.
Can you change the elevation like a treadmill or no? Just the speed?
Unfortunately, no. It is. Okay, so it's more for speed.
Curious. Yeah.
So if you're someone that wants to do incline, there's probably one that is super fancy at that level. I'm starting real basic. But there's probably super fancy ones that do elevation.
Well, I'm really happy that you love it. Congratulations. You know how sometimes we buy things and we're this is going to be amazing. And then just the expectation does not, meet what we were hoping for. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it is truly awesome, I thought it would be. So you're right. It does feel good. I was I wanted you to be awesome, and you are awesome. Thank you for being awesome.
Yeah, I think there's many discarded items in our consumeristic culture that we're this is going to be the thing that changes my life. This is going to be the thing that is everything I want it to be, and we buy it, and then it's just sits there. So But good job. Yay, wellness win for you. So
how about for
mine,
you?
Mine is very small, but I used to get my nails done all the time, and I enjoyed having pretty nails. And then last year in 2023, one of my like little mini goals for 2023 was to spend money more mindfully. I don't know if we had talked about it here on the podcast, but that was
Hmm.
one of my goals. And for some reason, my nails just felt like that was not a necessary use of money. So that's like the first thing that I stopped doing. So all of 2023, I didn't get my nails done once.
Wow.
And sometimes I was like, oh, I feel sad that I don't have pretty nails, whatever. But then for Valentine's Day this year, me and my Valentine's Dayness, I was like, you know what? I really want pretty Valentine's nails, pink and red and
Yeah.
hearts. And I finally went and got my nails done, and then I just got them done again. So they're like, you can't really see. They're like
Ah,
this cool, like cat eye situation.
that is so
Um,
cool. You can see it.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you so much. So I just decided, that it's time to treat myself to this small pleasure again. That it really
Yeah.
does make me happy. Like I teach with my hands, I'm constantly like pointing things out to students. So like, it's something
Mm.
that you see a lot every day for me. And
Yeah.
I did find a place closer to home that was much less expensive. So at least I'm still spending less time and money than I was before, but still having
Nice.
pretty nails. So I thought that was a good trade off. Yeah.
I love that. That is a great wellness win. I
Thanks.
I have a question. When you in 2023, so were you doing your own nails or you just kind of like let them go
I just,
natural, like didn't paint them or
yeah.
anything?
Yeah, because I feel like when I
Oh.
do them at home, it's a waste of time because it'll start chipping in like 5 seconds, and I had to wait like 3 hours for them to dry,
Yeah.
and then in like half a day they've chipped. So I never felt it was worth it to try to do them myself. So I just didn't do them
Mhm.
at all. Yeah, they were just,
Gotcha.
yeah. So it was a sad
Wow.
state for my nails all of last year. It was a great year in general, but not for my nails.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, no, that's real. That makes a lot of
yeah.
sense. I feel like that makes it even more special and more exciting to go back to the nail salon because it's not like
Yeah.
you were doing it yourself. It's like, oh no, they've been like chilling, ready,
Mhm.
and now they're back in the nail salon and they look really
Yeah.
nice. I love the like
Thank
shiny
you.
metallic ones. So I love your nails.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. So yeah, I
Yay!
think just that little bit of taking care of myself, treating myself is a win for me.
Yes! Yay! Good job, wellness wins to us.
Yes. So actually, that makes me laugh a little bit because it may be slightly against the spirit of Lent. I don't know. Let's talk about this. I
I
don't
did
know
not think of
about
that.
this juxtaposition. Yeah. Okay. So Lent. All right. Let's just like start at the very beginning. What
Yeah,
is Lent? Lent
great
is this
question.
season, right?
Yep.
This time period that can be different as to the start and the end, depending on the
Hmm.
calendar that your church uses. But it is the time period leading up to the Easter feast, Feast of the Resurrection of Jesus, right? So it is this
Yep.
time that we are supposed to be preparing ourselves, preparing our hearts, right, for this amazing thing that happened, the resurrection of Jesus, which means my salvation, right?
Yep. Kind of a big deal.
So, just again, really quickly, if you are an Orthodox Christian, we are on this different calendar. And so, Easter for us this year is super late. It's not till May 5th. And
Hmm.
the Lent is 55 days. So, we start Lent March 11th, right? If you are not Orthodox, Easter is like the end of March. So, I think Lent started actually on Valentine's Day. That was Ash
Yep.
Wednesday.
Hmm.
So yeah, so again, you're either in the middle of it or you are about to start now. So during this time, again, depending on your kind of church background, we like pay attention to Lent. We honor it in a different way. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that for a lot of people, there's some element of fasting, some element of kind of restricting indulgences and pleasures, right? Which is why I was like, maybe doing my nails during Lent is not, the best idea. But so, yeah. So like it's a spirit of like contemplation and
Mm-hmm.
deep like spiritual reflection to acknowledge this amazing thing that Jesus did for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's like I will say like this very broad essence. What do you think?
Hmm. I agree with a very broad essence of it. When I think about fasting, I think about how it is an opportunity. Sorry, my throat is having a fun time. It's an opportunity to basically have a different type of closeness with the Lord. So the idea is that when we, let's say you really like sweets, let's say you really like to watch a lot of TV, something that takes up a lot of your time that you
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you notice that because you engage in that thing so much, it's potentially taking you away from the closeness with God, right? It's not to say you are far from God because you watch TV. It's not what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But typically during moments of like praying about what to fast, people are praying things like, hey, God, what is it that is separating me from you? What is it that you want me to give up? So if you're someone who is not Orthodox, so for me, if you're new here, hi. I grew up Coptic Orthodox, but I don't practice Orthodoxy. I practice more like non-denominational, which I don't really know what that means nowadays. But I still observe Lent. But since I'm non-denominational, I can choose what it is that I'm fasting from. In different denominations, it's more of like, oh, you do a vegan diet or you do X, Y, Z. So it's something that's already like structured in there. So I decide, I'm like, okay, I pray. I'm like, God, what is it that is like separating me from you? What is that thing that I'm indulging in too much? What is the thing that you want me to say no to? And because of that, I will experience you more. And that will help me have a deeper reflection about a thing. So you can technically fast really whenever you want. Like in
Mm-hmm.
the Orthodox faith, you fast multiple times a year for multiple different holidays or feasts
Mm-hmm.
or basically big things that have happened that you want to commemorate and reflect on because it impacts you and your spirituality a lot, right? In non-denominational world, you fast for those things, or also just like, when you are about to make a big decision and you want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you are using a lot of wisdom. You can probably do that too as an Orthodox person. So you
Oh,
kind of just do
definitely.
what works
Yeah.
for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that's what it looks like. So I'm like, okay, God, what are the things that you want me to give up? For me, it usually tends to be some type of food item. Sometimes it will be like to add something. So there was a time where I was fasting and God really put it heavy on my heart to wake up a little bit earlier and then to start my day with reading the Bible. So I would wake up, the first thing I would look at in my phone is the Bible, and there was a specific verse that I was memorizing, and I was like, okay, God, how can I apply this to my day today? Can you show up in my life today, like through this verse? What does it look like for me to bring this verse to life for other people that I'm around today? Things like that. So basically, when you want to do a deep reflection, taking away something that's a distraction or adding something that will help you reflect even deeper. Essentially, that's what fasting is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you reminded me, we always talk about in the church that fasting is never done kind of by itself. So
Mm,
in Matthew 6, Jesus is talking and he mentions three things. He says, when you fast, and he says, blah, 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 right? Do you remember it? When you fast, don't go out looking all sick and tired and whatever, but wash your face and, be like rejuvenated and whatever. And when you pray, go into your room, close the door and pray. And he also says, when you give alms or give charity, do this. So he mentions all three of those things together: fasting, prayer, and charity. And then he goes on to say, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, right? But lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven. So those three
hmm
things together, the combination of fasting, prayer, and charity, are how we like prepare treasure for ourselves in heaven. So it's the work
hmm
of those three things that go together. So that's totally what we do during Lent, as a church and as individuals. Fasting is one component, but when you say adding something in, man, prayers is added in like to the nth degree. There's like so many
Yeah.
church services, constant church services, and
Yeah.
personal prayers to add into your day, and
Mm,
different readings, so many readings from the Bible. And then the one that I think it's easy to forget that we don't pay enough attention to is the charity. So that's something
mm,
that personally I like to try and pay attention to as I'm planning for Lent. Yes, there's the fasting component, there's the prayer component, which are more structured, but how can I give more, during this time? And if you
mm,
are being intentional about maybe indulging less, or spending less, then you can, instead of just saying, well, I'm going to spend less, well, how about instead of whatever I would spend, I'm going to give, you know?
Yeah.
So there was a time that, yeah, we've tried many things over the years, during Lent and during other times of the year. But one of the things we did was that anytime we would eat out, we would like mark down the amount that we spent. And then at the end
Mm.
of the season, that total amount that we spent, we donated to a food charity. So
Oh,
this
wow.
idea of like, well, if I can spend it on myself, I can share that as well.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that.
so yeah, I think that again, whatever faith background you come from, those three components go hand in hand. Like fasting by
Yeah.
itself, we talk about this a lot. It's like a diet, right? I mean, how many of us have heard of intermittent fasting? Everyone, like it's all
Yeah.
over the place, and that's basically what we do. Like the Orthodox way of fasting is not eating for some time, and that's
Hmm.
different for everyone, noon or whatever, and people determine with their spiritual guide kind of how much they can abstain from food, and then when we do eat, eating vegan. So
Hmm.
again, if you just do that like in isolation, that's a diet. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. God doesn't really care if we're dieting or not, right? So it's not dieting is not going to get us closer to God. It's that combination of okay, I'm fasting from these things in order to focus on prayer, in order to focus on giving, in order to focus on strengthening my spiritual life. Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but so it's a matter
Yeah,
of
this is
like
great.
less earthly food, right? Like I care less about my earthly food because I want more spiritual food. So it's
Hmm.
a like a focus change, is what is the
Hmm.
goal I think of Lent, that I don't need to feed myself so much physically. Like yes, I need to feed myself. I need sustenance. That's fine, but it doesn't need to be such a focus like it is
Yeah.
a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a big part of it too that you're talking about is that when you are less filled with the flesh, with the world, with things of this world, that is more room to be filled with God.
Mhm.
That's like kind of a big part of it too, where if you're spending more time eating and filling up your body, then that can potentially make it more difficult to like want to engage in spiritual things. Sorry, I burped. And so I think something that I've noticed personally when I fast is I tend to feel lighter. One, because I'm probably eating less, so that like logically makes sense. But two, I tend to feel lighter because I'm spending more time with God, and so I'm definitely still present on Earth. Obviously, I'm doing my day to day tasks, but I'm doing it more with a godly perspective because I'm spending more time thinking about God and incorporating God. And it's not to say that we are like forgetting our tasks of the day. It's not to say that we're being really obvious when we're fasting, like the Bible verse that you quoted, because then that means that we're trying to get attention on us.
Mhm.
Like I think the example he uses, like the Pharisees, is that when they do something, they want all of the attention so that
Right.
people can recognize what they're doing, and that takes away from the whole purpose of this thing, which is to do it with the intention because you want that closeness with God. Period. Um, I say that, but I do know it's also hard. Like, if you're somebody that is fasting from some type of food, and let's say you want to go out to eat with your friends, a question that I actually got from a client recently was like, how do I like go out to eat with a friend of mine? They're fasting for Lent, and like tell them like that I am fasting. So like, please can we go to like something that's more vegan friendly?
Mhm.
But like, I'm not supposed to be telling people that I'm fasting, right? And so it's a hard thing to balance. Like, yeah, still have your social life and do things, but there's things that you can say like, oh, like, could we go to something that's more like of a vegan restaurant? Or would you be open to going out for tea? Something like that. And if they're like, oh, why? Like, I've known you for 5 years. I didn't know you were vegan. Then you
Mhm.
can be like, oh, like for spiritual reasons, I'm fasting during this time. Right? That's not being boastful. That's not
Yeah.
saying, look at me, ooh la la. That's like, you still want to spend time with your friend. It's interesting, and I can see how they'd be curious to know that about you. So I mentioned that practicality because I know that's something that tends to trip us up, and we're like, well, let me just not fast because then it's going to be really confusing for the people in my
Mm.
life, and I don't want them to feel confused, and I don't want to deal with all of these questions. Like, I just want to just chill.
Actually, I think that can be a doorway to share your faith with someone,
Yeah.
and there's totally a way to share it without being boastful. It's one
Yeah.
thing to be like, ugh, I can't eat that right now because I'm fasting. Right? That's one
Right?
thing versus, actually, I'm just going to do this because I'm fasting. Oh, why are you fasting? Well, I believe that this time is for me to get closer to God. That's a great way
Mhm.
that sometimes it's really hard to share our faith with others. But when you have that,
Yeah.
curiosity from someone, that's such a great way to do it. So, yeah, I have
Yeah.
no problem sharing when I'm fasting in that way, right?
Yeah.
That it
Yeah.
allows me to talk about my faith. Um, yeah, so that's a really good point. What I want to bring up is why the focus on food, right? Because
Mm.
there's other things that I love to do. I love, love, love to focus on what else can I get rid of. I heard somebody describe it as what is a controlling influence in my life that I can let go of.
Mm.
So it
Wow.
might be like TV,
Powerful.
it might be social media, it might be a
Mm.
specific relationship, something like that. So that has nothing to do with food, and I think there's absolutely a place for it. I think the most impactful Lent I've ever spent, this was so many years ago, was we gave up TV for the entire 55 days. We did not turn on the
Mm.
TV. And it was like amazing. And I don't know why we haven't done it again. We should, we should probably do it again. We'll talk about that. But so that controlling influence. So that's super
Mm.
important. And I don't want to, like not acknowledge that. But let's talk about the food for a second because why
Mhm.
do we focus on the food so much? I think there's two reasons that I've heard of. So the first one is that, like, if you go back to the Bible, to Genesis, literally the first commandment that God gave, the very first one, was do not eat that specific thing, right? So
Mm.
it was about consuming, do not eat that specific thing. You can eat everything else, right? But
Yeah.
not from that specific tree. And then, so that's the first one. That was like the first commandment. So we go back to that, like, do not eat something specific, which is animal products for us.
Mhm.
And then I also just recently heard this, which I loved, that like when we fast, we try to go back to our pre-fallen state. So go back to the
Oh.
Garden of Eden before the fall, and how were they living? They were
Mhm.
eating from the earth. They were eating grains and fruits and vegetables, all the
Yeah.
things that God allowed to grow for them. And they were being sustained and filled by them because like they just needed it for physical sustenance, and their spiritual sustenance was God right there with them in the garden. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So if
Mm.
we try to go
Mm.
back to that where we're eating vegan like they were eating vegan, right, and focusing less on the food and more on being filled and satisfied by God, so we try to live like that pre-fallen humanity, which I thought that was so beautiful. And I've been in the church my whole life, and I just heard that recently, and I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
love that. Imagining myself back, with God in the garden. Just a little taste of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. I've never heard that before. Oh man, it makes me think about the times when I have heard like pastors or people talk about the book of Genesis before the fall. They always talk about how there's a special closeness that Adam and Eve had with God, because there was no sin to separate them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know if I can imagine that. And it almost like makes me teary. But like, can you imagine having no separation between you and God?
Mm-mm.
And I think there's this, oh, I don't remember where it is. It's somewhere in Genesis, but it just talks about how like Adam and Eve were like walking around, and the Spirit of God was just walking around with them, and
Mm-hmm.
they were just constantly communicating like, hi, how are you? What's the
Mm-hmm.
plan today? Oh my gosh, this apple is so great, thanks God. Wow, how pretty is this tree? Eve is so pretty, thanks God. Like, like
Mm-hmm.
just actively engaging with God in such a beautiful personal way. That like
Yeah.
I I mean, the fall happened, and so now we know, where we are here. But it just makes me think about that time, and for fasting to be something just to try to give us a glimpse of that. That's a
Yeah.
really beautiful way to look at fasting.
Yeah.
Mm,
Now, of course, though, we
wow.
have so many challenges because
Yeah.
pre-fall, there was no work, there was no struggle, there was none
Yeah.
of that. So it is very challenging to try and even catch a glimpse of that as I continue to work my 9 to 5, as I continue to have all my obligations that I have, right? And
Yeah.
the people I take care of and all of the things. So, this, like with anything else, we need to give ourselves grace and we need to ask for God's grace. Like anything
Yeah.
good that we do has to be fueled by Him, right? It has to
Yeah.
come from Him. If I'm just trying to do it by myself, there's of course a chance that maybe I won't even fail, like eat something I'm not supposed to eat. But again, I will end up the 55 days having completed a diet.
Mm.
Okay, great. That, what does that have to do with my spiritual life? So like we have to loop him in is
Yeah.
maybe not strong enough language. He needs to be at the core, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, before you decide, well, how am I going to observe Lent, pray about it. See how you're
Yeah.
you're led. And I want to ask him, God, please be at the center of everything I'm doing, whether it's eating a veggie burger, whether it's praying, whether it's giving, to charity, whether it's giving up TV. Like, I want you there at the center. Like, I want your presence. Like, that's the whole point of this, that I want to be
Yeah.
closer to you during this time. Yeah.
Mm.
I have something else to say. I'm sorry. I have a
Yes.
lot of thoughts about Lent, because I'll be real honest with you. As again a lifelong Orthodox Christian, like I've gone through times where I'm like, oh, I'm like super pumped about Lent and like doing all the things
Mm.
and feeling the spirit. And then there's other times where I'm like, I don't understand the point of this. Like, I
Mm.
understand the point of trying, of like making an effort spiritually, but like the food part, I'm like, I just feel like it has no point, and it's just so hard. Like sometimes I
Yeah.
spend more time thinking about food during Lent because I'm like, can I have this? Can I have that? I'm not accustomed to
Yeah.
preparing 24/7 vegan food, all of the time. So like I have to like focus on it more. So I go back and forth
Yeah.
about it.
That's
So
real.
one thing that I was thinking about recently was, okay, like this is a temporary thing. All of the
Mm.
fasts are temporary, but like if we're just thinking about Lent, it's 55 days. And then in our church, we go into a period called the Holy 50 Days after Easter, where it's like celebration, where everything is joyful. There's no fasting at all. Like usually we
Mhm.
fast twice a week during the year, but during this time, there's no fasting. It's just like all joyful. And a lot of people complain that all of the benefits of Lent are undone like instantly as soon as you feast, and it's
Mm.
just undone. So I'm thinking to myself, like, well, what is the point if it's temporary? Like if I'm only going to do
Mm.
this for a little bit of time. So I was kind of thinking about it, and like literally everything with my faith, I liken it to my human relationship, right? So think about this. Throughout the year, Chris
Yeah.
and I are obviously together all of the time, but we're busy. I have work, he has work, we have this, we have that, and we do our best to stay connected, during the year. But we take vacations, we take time out to be together, just the two of us, to work on our relationship, right? And that strengthens our relationship for the times when we are busy and we can't be like
Mm.
connected. So I kind of think it's the same thing. Like if we look at Lent as a time where you're like maybe on retreat with God, and you're
Mm.
working to focus on
Wow.
your relationship for that time a
Huh.
little bit more intensely than usual. And then for the rest
Yeah.
of the year, it's stronger, as you are more
Yeah.
distracted by other things and whatever. You have that like foundation because you've taken the time to focus and strengthen that relationship.
I love that
Yeah.
analogy.
Yay.
That is such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
um like you're retreating with the Lord. And
Yeah.
that is like so beautiful. Oh man, it also makes me think about that question brought up so much to my brain. Because I was thinking about the intention of fasting. If the intention of fasting is focused on food, then yes, it will undo everything because you just went from being a vegan for 55 days to now eating like burgers every day, right? So yeah, it's going to like undo the work that you did. But if the focus is closeness with God, then you can incorporate food back in and you can still appreciate and recognize and feel that closeness with the Lord. And we should always have closeness with God, y'all. Like this is like an
Mm-hmm.
everyday, all day thing that we do. It's just there's certain times of the year that we really want to focus on a certain aspect of our relationship with God because it's Easter, because it's Christmas, or, whatever,
Right.
making a big decision, stuff like that. And so I think that's one aspect of it. And I think another aspect of it too is like, I think it's great to celebrate Easter. Like, especially something like Easter, which is really the resurrection, right? Like Easter, I think that's kind of like the worldly term for it. I have
Mm-hmm.
no shade against it, but it literally in the church, it is Resurrection Sunday. What does that mean? Jesus died and resurrected for us. Like, that's kind of the core of our faith.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that didn't happen, we have nothing, right? All of this is for nothing. But because we have that, we have salvation. That to me is something worth celebrating for. Like the fact that Jesus died for me and therefore I will be saved and I can go to heaven. I wish to celebrate that because
Mm-hmm.
I would like to go to heaven. That sounds great. I'm not a big fan of going to not heaven. So that makes me feel like, yo, I definitely want to celebrate that. And in the celebration, you are recognizing, you are appreciating, you're saying, wow, like, God, you have given me, you love me so much that you sent me your son, and we were separated by sin. So you sent me your only begotten son to die for me so that I could have a relationship with you. Yeah, I'm going to celebrate that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's like how good is our God that he loves us so much that he chases after us. That is something worth celebrating. So I feel like, to me, I can understand where that question comes from, but I think the answer is more of, where is your focus and what is
Mm-hmm.
like your understanding of what fasting really means, right? If it's more dietary, then yeah, I could see how it doesn't work out. But if it's more spiritual in nature, then I think celebrating is another core component of our spirituality.
Yeah.
Celebrating what God has done for us. And that's a beautiful way for people to see the work of the Lord in your life. Like, oh, this girl's really happy. Why is she happy? Girl, let me tell you, because I'm saved by God, like by Christ. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's really big. So, that was a really interesting question to pose.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
like I said, I've had many years to think about this, and I'm still thinking about it, which is a good thing, because
Yeah.
I think what a lot of us can run into is this routine, right? Like, okay, it's
Mm,
Lent. This is what I do. I eat like this. I pray these things, and you kind of don't let it
yeah.
actually like internalize. You don't let it change you. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that like the biggest thing really is like what is taking the place of God in my life? Like what am I
Mm,
allowing to satisfy me or fill my time, or fill my mind, right? Like I need to clear space in my life, in my mind, in my heart for God. And
yeah.
that is what I think it's all about for Lent. So, I need some time of self reflection. I have about a week right before Lent starts for me, to think about
Mm,
what is it. So yes, I could do the
yeah.
vegan thing, sure, but what is really going to make an impact? Is it TV? Is it social media? Is it a specific person? Is it a kind of music? Is it, what is it that
Mm,
is making me have a harder time focusing on God? So I want to release like
yeah.
some stuff, like unburden myself, so that I can like
Yeah.
rise. My mind and heart can rise, towards heaven, towards God. So it's really powerful. Like I think if we let it be
Yeah.
powerful, it can be really powerful and changing for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope that that's like an approach that people want to take. Um, because I know that in some churches that I've been a part of in my life, I've heard of fasting in a way that was pressure inducing. And it was like, well, if you're a good Christian, you're going to fast.
Yeah.
Well, you're only a good Christian if you fast like XYZ way. Oh, you're only fasting from sweets. Well, I'm going to be a whole vegan and not do social media and not. And so there's a lot of pressure around
Hmm.
fasting. And I'm like, can we just like not? Can we just allow individualism in this in a healthy way that says, hey, what are the things that I want to fast from? And that looks like for me, that's healthy for me and my spiritual life. Because that's another thing too. Um, there are certain ways that we fast that could be healthy for you, but it's actually not healthy for other people. You know, if you really want to do a vegan diet, but if you are somebody who's working with a nutritionist and they're like, actually, you really need to do protein and it needs to come from an animal, otherwise, bad things are going to happen. So, I'm pretty sure God wants closeness with you in a way that's not going to require something really detrimental to happen to other aspects of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a reminder as well, in that reflection moment that you're talking about, that is really beautiful and is really crucial and really hard to do because it requires us to be honest with ourselves. Just reminding yourself that you don't have to take on the pressure from other people. Social media is helpful for learning about things, but also can be pressure inducing, and comparison can creep in, like last episode with
Mm-hmm.
Anne. There's a difference between like inspiration and comparison, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think taking the time to reflect and say, God, what is the thing that you want me to, like, how, instead of give up, because I think sometimes you have to add things, like I just said. I think the question is, God, how do you want me to incorporate you in my life during this Lent fasting time in a new way, in a way that I haven't really been doing before? Because you could take away stuff and still not feel a closeness with God.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Definitely.
lets me know that, there's something else there. And God speaks to us in so many ways. Maybe He wants you to spend more time in worship. Maybe it's spend more time in the Word. But having the time with God to reflect is really powerful.
Yeah. I do have to just throw in, as an Orthodox Christian, there is a very kind of prescribed, this is how we fast. But I think what some
Mhm.
people don't realize is, like, it can be tailored, right? So you just need to go
Mm,
to your spiritual father, and discuss with them, like, if there's
yeah.
dietary needs and medical issues and whatever it is, so don't hesitate to do that. Like, if you are Orthodox and you're like, well, can I, like, just change things? You're supposed to do that with guidance, before you
Mm,
do. I'm just going to throw that out there. But I do agree with you.
yeah.
There is some individuality that, if we don't realize that, and we just, like, are all supposed to do it that way. And, oh, I heard about this monk who, he doesn't eat until sunset. That means I'm supposed to do
Mm,
that. No, like, that doesn't mean you're supposed to do that. Like, you're going to work in the
yeah.
morning, you're taking care of kids, you're doing this, you're doing that. That doesn't, everybody is different. So yeah, I agree that comparison can unfortunately creep in there. um, but it all goes back to, what is your intention, right? Like, so if I
Yeah.
think that I'm supposed to fast till 5 because that guy fasts till 5, like, so what's my intention? To, like, be like him?
Mm,
No, that's not my intention.
mm,
I don't want to be like him. I want to be closer to Jesus, right? So is that going to help me be closer to Jesus? Maybe not. Maybe if I fast like him, I'm going to get prideful, and be like, "Ooh, look at me,
yeah.
like, I'm fasting all day," so you got to go back to your intentions, and that's where your spiritual guide can, really help you with that, and help prescribe the fast, to your kind of spiritual needs. But yeah,
Mm,
I think at its basis, fasting allows us to, empty ourselves, or kind of get rid of some earthly desires, earthly focus, to have a little bit more spiritual focus, and
yeah.
that, I think that's so needed. For me, it's definitely
Yeah.
needed. And, if we could do it properly, intentionally, everything needs intention. Again, if I just jump into it being like, all right, here's my shopping list, the hummus and the veggie burgers and the beans, I just basically change my shopping list, the soy milk versus the regular milk, like, that's not going to do anything for me, except
Yeah.
maybe lower my
Yeah.
cholesterol or something. That's about it. Like, the only thing that it's going to do for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. Intentionality, what's your focus? What's your point? And for me, I know I'm probably doing takeaways, but, like, the trifold, fasting, prayer, and charity, nothing is just fasting. Otherwise, you're just on a diet. And good for you if that's what you want to
Mm,
do. That's fine, but that's not
yeah.
Lent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think about, for people who may have, like, maybe they have just started fasting, or like maybe fasting for the first time. It can be really, fasting is hard. Like it is just hard. It is a hard discipline. It's a hard practice. And I think part of it is like just biologically. Like, let's say you're going to do something, like you're going to be a vegan. Your body's going to feel the difference. Your
Mm,
body's going to be like, hi, I'm mad at you. I want chicken. I feel hungry more, right? And you can pray, 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 but that's not going to substitute you eating chicken, right? So there's still this struggle that we have. Like when you're fasting and you're like, wow, I really want chicken. Yeah, you're supposed to be praying. Like that's an invitation when you're struggling to pray more, to engage in a spiritual discipline. It doesn't necessarily mean it always takes it away. Sometimes it does,
yeah.
but other times you're still struggling. But the difference is you're struggling with the presence of God versus you're just struggling on your own being miserable. And so I say that to say that was a surprise for me when I started fasting, was that, oh, like I feel the withdrawal of it. Like one time I fasted from sweets. So I was not having sugar. So yeah, like the impact of sugar in our body, and then when we take it away,
Hmm.
it it is my body feels a difference in the sense that I was having headaches and I was getting stomach aches and my energy was really low. There was a withdrawal experience that your body will go through when you take away the thing. Caffeine, that's a big one that I
Mm,
hear about when people fast from caffeine. The caffeine withdrawals are very real. And so if you're someone who's maybe new to fasting, just kind of know that it can be difficult. And if you do slip up because you're still getting used to it, that's where, like Marianne said, grace comes in. Be like, God, like I had a really bad caffeine withdrawal headache, so that's why I had some coffee today. Am I weak? Do I just need to like plan my day differently? Maybe since this is the first time I'm fasting, maybe I should have like, maybe I should do something different and then like ease my way into fasting, because we're talking about like really serious changes that you're making to your day, your eating, your time, all of that. So it does require some like thinking through. And there's been times where like I start fasting one way and I was like, oh, actually no, this is not drawing me closer to God. I still feel like there's some distance here. So I think I should actually be fasting from XYZ. And I just changed it in the middle of it because I was
hmm.
like, I can tell that there's something here. So I think that's where having wisdom and like having proper expectation comes in. So
Hmm.
hopefully during this time you feel a little bit more motivated, a little bit more supported in your Lent journey, whether you are fasting for the first time and you're nervous about it, or you're like a pro at fasting. You're like, all I do is fast and I'm like super awesome at it.
Hmm.
Wherever you are in that, we are excited for you. And if you want to get in touch with us for any support or any resources, there's tons of resources. Even in the Orthodox faith, tons of resources on fasting. For my non-denominational friends, tons of like devotionals that are specifically about Lent or specifically about fasting.
Hmm.
So you can contact us. You can find us on Instagram at Connected Wellness Podcast. You can email us at connectedwellnesspodcast@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to Marianne specifically, she's on Instagram at Wabasaba. If you want to reach out to me specifically, I'm at Real with Rachel Ann on Instagram. We're also on Facebook at Connected Wellness Podcast on Facebook. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Marianne as we say goodbye for our 30-second episode.
Excellent. Yes. I'll just say that my prayer for Lent, for anyone who's observing, is that we can hunger for God more than for the things of this earth, right? So that will be my
Amen.
prayer. Anytime there's a struggle, Lord, let me be more hungry for you, you know. Um,
Amen.
and then, yeah, thank you for listening and have a blessed Lent. And, we'll probably chat again before resurrection. But yes, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, be well.
Yes,
Thank
be well,
you.
everybody. Bye.